program. He was in our STEM program that was at Normandale for 2 years, and then he went and did PSEO. So he's going to talk about the PSEO part. He also was in our first cohort of our experimental DA humanities program. So he has some commonalities with a variety of the students who are represented here today. And he just started and was at Carleton this fall. And Carleton is one of the schools that actually did do in-person school, which I have lots of students all over the country sort of in different situations in that regard. But I did think it would be helpful to sort of hear from a recent graduate about like what his process was. So go for it, Henry.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I decided I shifted right to PSEO kind of right out of Normandale. I did part-time PSEO my first year and then full-time PSEO senior year. For me, it was kind of a decision of feeling more prepared for college and kind of also like looking at what I wanted to do and kind of I didn't really mesh well with maybe AP style learning. It just wasn't for me in some ways, and so I kind of liked the opportunity to take classes maybe that were less targeted towards a test at the end of the year, and maybe more like the options that came with kind of the U of M's PSEO curriculum and also Normandale's PSEO curriculum were very nice for me. I will say there are some trade-offs that definitely come with doing something that maybe colleges don't normally or necessarily know about. It's easier to explain to a college what AP is, and if you do really well in AP, than it is to explain what PSEO is and try to make them understand kind of how it fits into their what they accept in terms of courses and credits and things like that. I will say for Carleton, as well as obviously the U of M, taking PSEO courses is helpful in terms of credit transfer, but so is AP in terms of having a good resume. I really like the freedom that came with PSEO, but there was not the same extent of a DA humanities program like there is now. I really enjoyed being able to take English classes at the U and art classes at the U and things like that maybe I couldn't get as much of at Jefferson as you guys can now through the new DA humanities program. I don't know, let's see what else. I chose Carleton partially, this is not a very relatable stance, but partially because of the pandemic. It was very handy to have a close school, and if everything hit the fan, I would only be 40 minutes away or whatnot. My credits transferred very well there, which was very helpful, and both my parents went there, so I kind of knew what it was all about to some extent. I really enjoyed Carleton. This was my first semester. It was a weird first semester, obviously. It was in person, but there were definitely a lot of restrictions. Harder to make friends, that kind of stuff. But again, that you guys might not have to worry about that. If this whole thing clears up, fingers crossed. Let's see. I haven't selected a major yet. This is my plug for liberal arts. You get a couple years to kind of figure things out, take classes that interest you, rather than jumping right into a major and feeling stuck in a major, maybe potentially. It's kind of like high school in some ways, in that you take a pretty broad kind of scope of classes and you keep doing English and you keep doing science and you keep doing all these kind of different things without having to worry about maybe not being able to meet your major requirement. I don't have to decide until the end of sophomore year. It's different for different liberal arts colleges, but for Carleton, at least, I get a couple years. Um, so yeah, if you're one of those people who kind of maybe doesn't mesh well with AP, or like kind of like some more the freedom that comes with kind of being able to take a wide variety of classes, I think PSEO is a good option for that. I would say it is a very case by case basis, and AP is definitely like more set up to mesh well with a college application process, and is a very helpful, just a very helpful program in general. I would also say it's good preparation for college to feel like you've taken some college classes before college, and you feel like you kind of, maybe at least part-time, have kind of gotten the gist of like what a college classroom is like, how it's run, that kind of stuff. That really was helpful for me to feel prepared when I actually ended up going to college, I guess, for real. I don't know, if you're also one of those people who kind of feels like they have a lot of interests and they can't decide on what they want to do, I would say liberal arts maybe are for you.
Okay. Thank you, Henry, for getting us off started. And so people can think about, if you've got questions about, I mean, Henry's the person on the panel that went through the college application process the most recently. So like you can obviously sort of think about, those types of questions from him, but also like if there's questions about Carleton specifically. Okay. So our next person we're going to go to is Connor. So Connor, this is one of the bad parts about me being the person that I am with my brain. I have to remember like actually how old you are. But if I remember correctly, Connor, this is your senior year, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Once people graduate, they enter this folder in my brain called graduate, and then like that's a very big folder, and it doesn't have subfolders, which is a problem in my brain.
No, yeah, I'm kind of surprised actually that I'm like the second most recent graduate, because high school feels like a long time ago now.
Well, a lot of the people who I wanted to have speak weren't going to school in person this year, and so I felt like that would give it a really weird flavor for the panel. So I will admit it is a weird mix of people, but I also feel like these kids already know what it means to go to school in a pandemic. They don't really need to hear about what it's like to go to school in a pandemic. They know just as much as the college students about what it means to learn in a pandemic. So I feel like they need to learn more about what it's like to go to college. So that's how I made the decisions that I made.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So I guess a little background. I was not in DA high school. I was actually in, I think, like the year before it started.
You couldn't be in DA because it didn't exist, but you would have been one of these kids.
Yeah, I believe we got as far in the process as I was like supposed to be in DA high school, but then it didn't end up happening that year. So I kind of went through the like normal high school route, I guess. And so let's see, I guess my junior year I was still at Jefferson, did kind of like the AP classes route. And then senior year is where I switched over to PSEO in some ways. And I took some classes at Normandale, some classes at the U, kind of like just whatever like would make my schedule work. And I guess the reason for that kind of was actually that I had taken like a lot of math classes and I wanted to like continue exploring that. And so the best way to do that was through PSEO. So that's kind of like why I ended up going down that route.
Because you took like Calc 3 in high school, right, Connor?
Yeah. So I kind of went through the calc stuff and then a couple classes at the U. And so I guess that's kind of like one of the big benefits of PSEO is that like you get a much wider variety to like pick from, as far as like it doesn't have to be math. Like if you're really interested in like taking a lot more getting a lot more depth in like biology or something like that, it does allow you to kind of like maybe do more of that than you might be able to in high school. So I definitely say that.
Did you feel
Yeah,
like
I
that?
guess.
Did you feel like the AP classes prepared you for college?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. I think high school learning is a lot different than college learning, so it might be kind of different as far as like um, PSEO is better preparation to actually like take college classes. Where you're doing a lot more of your work like outside of class, as far as like studying, reading the textbook, and you're really just kind of in class for like a shorter amount of time. So there's like more responsibility, but more freedom that goes along with that. And so I guess yeah, my senior year, I actually really preferred that kind of schedule as far as like it felt really nice to have like time in the middle of the day where I wasn't like in class as compared to high school, and be able to like like spend more time like getting lunch or whatever. But yeah, I guess the flip side, especially like from the high school environment, is that it's kind of hard to schedule that around other high school stuff. Like, so I actually, my senior year, I would drive to the U and then drive back to Jefferson the same day to do like activities at high school. Like soccer and cross country skiing happened at the end of the day. And so it was kind of like a logistical nightmare as far as like figuring out how to schedule the classes in a way that I could like drive like, I don't know, throughout the day. So I guess that's maybe like one other thing to take into consideration. Um, yeah, other PSEO versus high school. I that's mostly what I have to say. I think kind of going along with maybe the thing I said about having a variety of classes to choose from is like um, even for the stuff you're maybe not as interested in, like there's a lot of options to choose from. And so like for example, I wasn't really like that into biology, and so I got to kind of like satisfy that requirement by taking like human biology at Normandale, which was a much more like interesting class to me than maybe doing like AP bio or like general or cell biology or something like that. And so that applies to like English, like other subjects as well, that like you can kind of take classes to fulfill high school requirements without like it having to be like a specific class. Um, and yeah. So as far as kind of like choosing a college, I guess I went into it with like a few things that I was thinking about. I knew ideally I wanted to go somewhere like out of state, just to kind of like explore slash like get away from the environment, or just like get out into a new environment, I guess. And I wanted to go to somewhere maybe like slightly like larger school, again kind of the same thing, just to like meet a lot of new people, and just I think for more kind of like diversity of opportunities and stuff like that. And so I kind of knew going into college that I wanted to major in math, so I was also thinking about schools that had good math programs, and thinking, but at the same time, though, I actually didn't want anywhere where I'd be like locked into anything. I guess kind of going back to the liberal arts thing, somewhere that like it would be easy enough to kind of like explore other things. Um, and so, yeah, and so in the end, I ended up at Stanford. That's where I am now. Like I'm a senior, still majoring in math. Um, And I think a couple of things that I didn't think as much about that ended up being important. Um, for one thing, like we're on the quarter system, which has actually been like one of I think the best parts, because, like I mentioned, like it kind of gives you more like academic freedom to take like one-off classes that have nothing to do with your major, like what you want to do, but you just want to take like film studies or something. Um, and it also is a lot easier to study abroad. which I'm glad that kind of like pushed me to do that, because I think that was a great experience as well. Um, and so yeah, I've had a great experience here. I also really wanted to go on the West Coast, I guess, just get out of the snow a little bit. And yeah, I think there's also just kind of like a lot of academic opportunities here, I guess, to, do research, to like do some like specific programs over the summer. And so like those resources have been super helpful. Um, as far as I guess how I picked a major, um, it's kind of boring in some ways. It's just I took a lot of math classes in high school. I really like taking math classes, and that was kind of like what I was interested in. And so I guess early on, I knew that was what I wanted to major in. And the other benefit there is that, like, I kind of saw math as something that you can study in college and then, do whatever you want from there. Like, whether that's kind of more like going down like a computer science route, like business, even like law type stuff. Like, you can kind of, um, you have like freedom to explore other things, even if like you're majoring in math. That's different for maybe like if you're trying to go down more of like a pre-med route or like something like that where there's more like stringent requirements. But I mostly wanted to like leave options open and like explore more, and so I thought like math was kind of like a good thing to like study that, but then take other classes and like see what interested me as far as like a career. Um, and so yeah, I guess as far as like general advice, um, kind of along those lines, like just you know, it's pretty early to like figure out like exactly what you want to do. So I'd say like being able to explore like taking different classes, like exploring different like career stuff is really big. I think I I had this mentality, and a lot of people did do in high school, maybe that like you kind of feel like you want to like get through stuff as quickly as possible. Like it's like the overachiever mentality. Um, but I think what I've realized like in college is that it's better to like kind of take time to like first of all like just enjoy college, enjoy high school, to be honest. um, Although maybe I'm just like pretty far removed from high school, but and just be able to explore like academically as well. um, and so like it might be possible to kind of like get through things as quickly as possible, especially coming from like a DA high school perspective. Like you can basically get a bachelor's degree in like I don't even know like 1 or 2 years or something. But like as far as it's kind of like financially possible, like if you're able to get like scholarships to make it affordable, I'd say like it is worth it to maybe like have another year of college, even if like you don't necessarily like need to like get the specific major that you want to, because there's like a lot of other sides to kind of education. Like there's the social side as well. I think like that's really important as well. So like yeah, I guess kind of my advice is just don't feel like you have to like get things done as quickly as possible, because like that's like you want to like be an overachiever or whatever. But like yeah, take time to explore, take time to like smell the roses, I guess. I don't know.
I have one more question
yeah.
for you, Connor.
Yeah.
So, like, we have a kid who at Kennedy who got into Princeton this year, and I'm really excited about the fact that Twan, who's a DA high school student, got into Princeton. But I'll be honest, Stanford is a tough nut to crack. We have not had as much success as I would like getting people into Stanford from either Kennedy or Jefferson. And so I wondered if you had any advice for, like, we have kids on this call who I honestly think should consider applying to Ivy level schools because they're that caliber of student. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to try to apply to an Ivy League school?
Yeah, I mean that's a hard question. I feel like a lot of times people like assume like once you get through the process, you kind of like know how to do it, and so, honestly, it's
That's
not really
okay.
like true. Um, but I guess at the same time, I think there are like a few things that are pretty important. I think, like, I mean, maybe just to name a few things that I think might have been helpful for my application is I was involved in a lot of activities in high school that I did for like a long amount of time. Like I was in like soccer and cross country skiing for like all 4 years of high school, plus like eighth grade, and I was kind of like involved in like the band program for a really long amount of time. So I think they like seeing kind of like that demonstrated interest that
Mm-hmm.
uh, like it's over the course of like 4 years, and like you're really kind of like getting more depth. Um, and I'd also say like it's good to have kind of like I think maybe what helped was that like I was applying as a math major. I had like taken a lot of math classes and um, like showed that I was like really interested in like learning more as far as like trying to find the opportunity to like go to the University of Minnesota to like keep taking math classes. Um, but yeah, I guess maybe on the other side too, just like I think like getting to know your teachers for uh, like letters of recommendations and like not just being like a super like academically focused,
Mm-hmm.
but also just kind of being um, like a nice person probably
Mm-hmm.
helps as well.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I don't have any like secret code or anything, and honestly, I have no idea like what it was that helped me get in or
That's
anything
okay.
like that.
I still think
But
that was a good answer. It's okay. All right. Thank you, Connor.
yeah,
So Harry is our next speaker, and Harry just graduated from the University of Minnesota, and he also wasn't in the DA program, but his brother was in the DA program. Um, but he's the type of student who would have been in the DA program, and I felt like it was important to have the U of M represented as a part of this conversation as well, because I will be honest, like I have more students who go to the U of M than any other school. So I felt like that would be weird to like leave that out of the conversation. So go for it, Harry.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for
I'm
coming.
Harry. I graduated from Jefferson in 2015. Some of you might know my brothers Stuart or Nathan, both the same last name. So I did PSAO part-time just my senior year. My reason for this was I really actually enjoyed the AP schedule, which I know is perhaps not common. And so I took mostly exclusively AP classes my sophomore, junior, and most of my senior year. The reason I did PSEO is because it let me fit in more classes into what was already perhaps an overcrowded schedule. So, for instance, you can do 2 maths in a year because it's on a semester system. So you can do Calc 1 one semester and Calc 2 the next semester, instead of, say, at Jefferson doing like Calc BC for just an entire year, but only getting it to count for one. So I was able to take a lot of extra math and science classes that I wanted to take, but knew I wouldn't be able to take at Jefferson. So it ended up just being sort of the minimum amount I could do with still getting all the classes I wanted. I actually found the most challenging thing with PSEO not to be the actual courses or the content, but as Connor said, logistically figuring out how to make it work. It's really, really irritating trying to schedule classes that, because they either usually like overlap with 3 or 4 classes at Jefferson, which just make it basically you can't take it, or they're at night, which is when you do all your extracurriculars like Nordic, debate, marching band, all these other things. Whatever you do, you'll always overlap, and it's really, really frustrating to try to figure out. what classes you can actually take while still maintaining either a social life or actually like getting classes for Jefferson. So that was the most frustrating aspect of part-time. Basically, what ended up happening is I just worked it out with one of my teachers at Jefferson that I was just going to be late to class every single day, and he was just okay with that because he knew I was going to do well anyway. So it ended up working out, but it was really, really irritating. Additionally, trying to get to and from classes, you basically have to have a car or have someone who's driving and carpooling with them because unless you're doing it full time, there's really no way you can make this work with your schedule, especially if you're trying to fit in extracurricular activities after school. The big perks are you get to deal with professors, which in my case was I really, really disliked them, the ones I had. And so I knew going into actual college and university when I graduated that I was going to have to put up with professors I didn't like. And it's an entirely different beast dealing with them as opposed to just teachers from Jefferson or Kennedy you dislike. So getting some of that experience before actually arriving at a bigger school, I just went to Normandale, was really, really helpful. And I found that that was allowed me to plan exactly what classes I wanted to take better. So when I was applying for schools, strategy was pretty straightforward. I just applied to 7 or 8 Reach schools, I believe they're still called, and then the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And the advantage was I heard back very quickly from the U that I got in, so I knew I was going to have a school to go to, and then I could just wait and see what the Reach schools offered me and which ones I got into. I knew I wanted to go to the U. There's quite a few good schools in the Midwest, but the U was very, very close. I had the advantage of having traveled there for things like debate and other extracurricular activities, so I sort of knew my way around campus. I already knew some of the professors, and so I knew that it was just a place I was going to feel very, very like welcome and familiar with. Also, it was in Minneapolis, which is a city. I know what to do there. So that was my logic for just applying there and hearing back very quickly. I ended up choosing the U over a couple of Reach schools that I got into because money, essentially. It came down to the U was offering me a lot more scholarships, and I had a lot of other perks, such as they have an honors school, which you get into, which allows you to get into more difficult classes that are smaller course sizes that are specifically tailored to individuals who are potentially more academically inclined. And so you can get sort of a more personalized experience and interact more closely with professors or instructors who are maybe sort of at the cutting edge of their field. So that was a really good option. Similarly, the scholarships made it so much less. And knowing sort of where I wanted to go with my life at this point was very, very helpful because I knew at some point I wanted to apply to graduate school and that was going to cost a whole bundle. And so understanding that I didn't want to have a lot of debts coming out of undergraduate school made my choice a lot more easy. So I ended up going to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. I selected my major very, very quickly. First semester freshman year, I'm a history major. That's what I ended up graduating with. It was essentially just I completed all my prerequisites, like I'm sure most of you will. And so I just decided I really like history. I really want to do history. So I took a bunch of history classes and declared a history major. Again, not particularly exciting. It's just I knew that was something I wanted to do. Partially because I'd already had so many credits coming to school, I could add on to that later. And so sophomore year, first semester, I declared English and as a second major and medieval studies as a minor. And because I had taken so many classes before getting to university, I was able to sort of, as Connor said, shop around some of these smaller, more liberal arts classes that I really thought I would enjoy. Ended up finding an instructor I really, really enjoyed and just ended up taking 5 or 6 of her classes, which counted both as English majors and also just added on the medieval studies minor. And this was really, really excellent because I did well in all these classes because it was a great instructor. I was able to get a lot of my friends to take these classes because they also were doing English and I could highly recommend this instructor and they also loved her. And then when it came time to apply to jobs after school, she was able to get me a very, very good recommendation that was the difference maker for the job I ended up accepting. Also, as Connor said, you can do study abroad significantly easier because you don't have to worry about taking your courses quite the same way other students had to. I know having English as a major and studying abroad means a lot of the classes don't actually apply because the English program doesn't usually want to count classes as English if it's in any country that doesn't speak English, like as a native language. So pretty much unless you're going to the UK, nothing's going to count. But I was still able to do an entire year and still have enough credits to graduate with an English major. So it was just very, very easy to fit this into the schedule. And again, knowing I wanted to do this in advance, having all these classes was a huge help. My advice to you is when you go to school, you're going to hear a lot, take the professor, not the class, and that could not be more true. You're going to do so much better in classes where you like the professor, even if they're considered harder, than classes that are considered easy where you don't like the professor. Similarly, the more you work with a professor, the more willing they are to sort of go above and beyond for you, because they'll be more willing to say if you have like an issue with one of your academics, you can usually discuss it with them, and then knowing your resume and knowing how much work you've done with them, they'll be much more inclined to listen to you than if it's just a random professor. And similarly, coming out of school, having professors that you can ask to give you letters of recommendation that will give you glowing letters is a huge advantage. So I strongly encourage you to sort of, as you're going to school and taking classes, to be looking for professors that might be able to offer this to you once you graduate.
Thank you, Harry. All right. We are now, it looks like I only invited men on this panel, but that is not true. Our next speaker is Jessica. Jessica, I don't remember what year you and Alexa graduated, but you're going to fill them in. But Jessica didn't go PSEO, right? And so Jessica's our only, like, totally didn't do PSEO speaker, so she can speak to the whole just taking BPS classes piece, as well as can speak to not only doing the liberal arts thing, but on the other end of the country from where Connor was. Okay. Thank you, Jess.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess. I graduated in 2014. And I ended up going to Wesleyan University. It's a small liberal arts school in the middle of Connecticut. It's like 2,500 students. I just want to say, like, a couple people have already talked, so if you have any questions, I would love to answer your specific questions. So feel free to just drop them in the chat. Yeah, so I didn't do PSEO in high school because I did DA from 4th through 8th grade. And coming into high school, I had my friends from DA, but I sensed that if I did PSEO, I would really, really be removed from Jefferson and like making new friends there, and having more of a high school life. I felt like I couldn't do like PSEO at the U especially and have both of those. So I decided to just do APs. Did a lot of APs and also did like sports after school. I did yearbook, and then I also found this like teen volunteer program at Planned Parenthood that I was really passionate about. So those were my like extracurricular activities that I did in high school. So the strengths and weaknesses of doing AP. AP, I have to agree with Henry, it like wasn't my favorite. Sometimes it was okay, but it's like a ton of memorization, really fast, going through materials and geared towards a test at the end of the year. So that wasn't my favorite. I definitely would have liked to have a little bit more of like a college style learning experience in high school, where there's like more critical thinking, discussion, just time to getting to material instead of just going through it really quickly with the goal of memorizing. And then Wesleyan, why did I choose Wesleyan? I felt like I didn't fit in high school, and I really wanted to be around people that I felt were more like me. So honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to major in college, so that wasn't like a big motivating factor when I was looking for schools. I went for liberal arts schools because I didn't know what I wanted to major in. And other than that, I sort of looked for schools that had the type of people and social life that I was looking for. So I liked Wesleyan because they didn't have a strong Greek life. That wasn't like the core of social life at that school. Like seemed to be a lot of like liberals, leftists, people who are interested in social justice there, which was important to me. What else? Just a few things about Wesleyan. Since I'm here, I'll just talk about it. it has an open curriculum, I believe it's called. So there are no core requirements that everyone who goes to Wesleyan has to fulfill. So the only requirements you have to fulfill are for your major, which frees up a lot of classes for you to just take whatever you want. And I think I really enjoyed that. And it can be a totally different experience from a lot of other schools where there's so many requirements. You don't have as much choice. And yeah, so think about if you want that. Also, Wesleyan, I think if you are looking into going to a small liberal arts school, I think this doesn't matter as much for schools with like 40,000 people at it like the U, but I think it is important to find a good social match. It's because these little schools, they have such a strong like personality to each of them, and it's kind of hard to know that if you're not there. Like all my friends from the East Coast who had parents that went to these schools, had older friends that went to these schools, they knew like, oh, Amherst, these are kids that study super hard and never leave the library, blah, blah, blah. Oh, Bard, these are really weird kids. But if you are looking into liberal arts schools, I would definitely recommend seeking that out. I think online forums, talking to other people if you can, is a good way to do that. I ended up majoring in sociology and a minor in environmental studies. I don't know. Let me see if I have any other questions to go through. I don't know. What do you think? Should I say anything else?
No, that's cool. But you liked going to Wesleyan?
Yes, I
Good.
really did. I felt like it was a good match.
Good. All right, so we're going to go to our last speaker, Alexa. I want you guys to be thinking about your questions since you aren't percolating them in the chat, which is fine. But I want you to think about them. So Alexa graduated the same year as Jess. And she went to Berkeley, so she went to the other coast. And so if you guys are looking at this, like, if I remember correctly, Stanford is also a larger school. So we've got, larger schools, smaller schools, the U of M as well as Berkeley are both state schools. The other schools are private schools. So I'm trying to represent a variety of different sort of types of schools so people can think about them. And for those of you who are STEM nerds, I just want to plug that I think that Berkeley brags repeatedly about the fact that they have like the most people with like the Nobel Prizes for science at their institution. So it's like the way, so like every school's got their little thing. I think that's Berkeley's thing. All right, go for it, Alexa, and thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexa Grinke. I graduated from Jefferson in 2014. I did some sports like cross country and track. I was on the debate team at Jefferson, and I also volunteered at some political and nonprofit organizations like Out Front Minnesota and Intermediate Arts. I did PSEO full-time at the U of M my junior and senior years. I chose to do that because I had taken all the math classes that Jefferson offered, and also I had some bad experiences with Jefferson teachers and just generally was very done with Jefferson. And so I really enjoyed the freedom of like just the schedule and just the change that I got from PSEO. So I really enjoyed it and was glad I did it. As other people mentioned, some of the challenges are the logistics. Like I couldn't have done, even though I was going full time, which makes it a little easier to schedule, I wouldn't have been able to do extracurriculars if I hadn't had a car, just because transportation is such a challenge if you don't have a car, at least from Bloomington, or the area I was in, Bloomington, to the U. And then also, like, I was fine with just continuing to do sports and having my core group of friends through sports and the organizations I worked with. But if you really enjoy, socializing in class, you don't really get that much of that at PSEO. Let's see. So I went to UC Berkeley. I got admitted directly into my major, which was civil engineering. And so it would be harder for me to change my mind. So that's one thing to think about. As I was applying to colleges, I was really torn between doing like a liberal arts degree in sociology or history or doing a engineering degree. My brother, who did a liberal arts degree and then almost immediately wanted to go into computer science, was like, it's way easier to switch the opposite way if you change your mind. So I don't know if that's actually true, but he convinced me it was true. So I decided to get an engineering degree, and then if I wanted to later, I could, switch directions. And I think that's one suggestion I have for y'all, because you have to make decisions a little faster than most, is like think it through, but don't get too stressed about it, because there are a lot of ways to get either more education or go to other type of training, or just through job experience to kind of change your direction in your career or in your education. So like make your best guess, but don't worry too much, because you'll have plenty of time and opportunities to change your mind. Even if, you have to finish the degree out because you're already 2/3 the way there, you'll be able to change your mind and get other education. Let's see. Sorry.
It's okay. And when you went to Berkeley, they took all of your they took all of your U of M credits, right?
So they took my my liberal arts credits as just general, I don't know, what do you call them?
Your general ed credits.
Elective credits, or general ed credits. I chose to retake calc because as I was going into Berkeley, everyone was like, it's so hard, it's so different. Like, you don't want a really challenging first semester, you want a super easy first semester. And I also am really bad at remembering things. And the last time I had taken calc was my junior year. So I chose to retake it, even though I could have used either the AP credit or the U of M credit to get out of it. And then there were a couple others that they did not take. And so I think, for example, I took bio at the U of M, and then in order to get it to transfer as credit towards like my bio requirement, they had to review the syllabus. And because the syllabus didn't exactly match all of the things that their class covered, they wouldn't give credit for that. Let's see. I think that's all I really have to say, but I'm happy to answer questions.
That's cool. Jess wants you to hold up the dog.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just got a new puppy and he is barking, obviously. Hi.
Oh my goodness. That's so cute. All right.
Yeah.
So you've got humans and dogs able to answer your questions. So Theo, it sounds like you have a question. Do you want to ask your question out loud, or do you want to type it? And other people can type their questions, or you can say that you want to be on the stack.
I can just talk.
Okay, go for it, Theo.
What type of, this is for Alexa specifically, what type of engineering are you in? And when you applied, were you specifically, did you apply knowing that you were going to go into engineering? And if you did, what do you think made you stand out as somebody applying to engineering?
So I am in civil engineering. I have a civil engineering degree, and that's what I work in now. The way that it is at UC Berkeley is you apply directly into the specific engineering major, or you can apply to the engineering undeclared program where you have more time to choose, but you start by taking general, math and science courses that are applicable to most engineering classes. I chose not to do that because I heard it was more competitive to get into that major, or like the engineering undeclared program. So I just did my best guess and was like, I think civil engineering is interesting. So I'll start with that and change my mind later and cross that bridge if I need to. So I knew I was going into engineering when I applied there. What made me stand out? I guess I had a strong academic background. I'd proven that I could take college courses, but I also did have some variety. Like, I didn't have any type of STEM-ish extracurriculars. All of it was non-STEM, which I'm not 100% sure if it helped me or hurt me, but that's something. Also, out-of-state students have to pay more, so UC Berkeley, I think, is perhaps more interested in letting them in, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but.
Thank you, Theo, for asking a question. Theo asked a question and he wasn't blown up. Nothing negative happened to Theo. So, can other people take the same step to ask a question, and we can and you can also demonstrate that Zeus will not strike you down with the lightning bolt?
So I have a question. So something that like my parents are kind of worried for me is that I might run out of math classes to take. Is that a problem that any of you had, and if so, like kind of what did you do?
And who is asking that? Just for me.
Gabe.
Hi, Gabe. All right. Yes, they can answer that, and I can help. I can help with that too. But go for it. Who wants to take a stab at that one?
I can answer that because that was kind of my exact situation. Yeah, so I guess what happened for me was kind of junior year. I finished Calc 3 and 4 at Normandale, and so at that point there were really no more math classes to take for senior year, and that was kind of what pushed me to do PSEO at the U, I guess. And so I guess you kind of have a couple options. Like you can not, continue down the like main math track and kind of like take other math classes, like statistics type classes, either at Normandale or like AP Stats, or kind of like other things along those lines at Normandale. Or I think you can kind of like explore either doing PSEO at the U, which means it's a little more of a commitment, like I said, because then you have to, be getting downtown. So it's harder to make it work, but I definitely thought it was worth it to kind of like continue. Or, you can find other options. I think maybe like doing like online classes. Obviously that's a bigger thing now too. But like, I'd say just like looking around like online to see like what you can find could also be helpful to continue. Or you can space out your math classes so that doesn't happen. But yeah.
I think that between PSEO, online classes, and the fact that BPS is adding computer science classes, we can find things for people to take for your 4 years. I think it's more, to me, I think the important thing is for you to figure out for you what would be the best fit for you. Does that make sense? Like, because PSEO isn't for everybody, just like going to high school classes isn't for everybody. But I appreciate that question, Gabe. Carolyn has one. What would you recommend doing after school activities? If so, how many? And she's thinking about in terms of like trying to distinguish her like college resume. Does anybody want to take that particular one? And Xander has a question which I think is related to it, which is sort of like no, actually Sneezy is a question that's related to that, which is that are there certain activities that you think colleges are more impressed by? Is there anybody who wants to take a stab at those?
I can try to take a little bit of it. I would say definitely 100% do after school activities. Unless you are gonna like really do amazingly in every single class and just head down in your coursework and everything. And even then, like I think it's really good, and colleges really want to see that you are a well-rounded person, maybe even more than you're getting straight A's across the board and doing really well in tests. And so I think it's important not to do it just for like a getting into a college thing, but find things that you're interested in and commit to them, because it'll also make it so that you're not just spending all your time doing schoolwork. It's actually in some ways a good way to just kind of like balance your life out more. So I think there's like it's a good double whammy for after school activities. And certain activities, I would say, as long as you are interested in that activity and as long as you demonstrate interest in it and continued interest, I don't think colleges necessarily are going to be like, oh, this person did robotics, but this person only went to poetry slams, and therefore, I guess maybe if you wanted to go into engineering, then maybe an after-school activity related to engineering, or if you wanted to go into English and after-school activity related to poetry, maybe would be better. But I think in general, like, as long as you're demonstrating interest, that is very helpful, and as long as you kind of enjoy what you're doing. And then, can I also touch on the PSEO social life question?
Sure, you can, and then I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said, but go for it, Henry.
I have to, I have to plug PSEO there. I would say it opens up your schedule in some ways a lot more than high school classes do. And I think if you have a couple people you know who are also doing PSEO, it can be really, really great, actually. I had a lot of great experiences, like riding the bus there and back with my friends, and hanging out around campus, kind of maybe going to restaurants and kind of walking around campus, and the different opportunities that PSEO has to just like kind of let you take time into your own hands is really great for, I think, meeting people. And also sometimes you can make friends who are in college in your classes if you're talkative enough, which I am. Especially classes with small discussions like English and stuff like that instead of big lectures. There's good opportunities definitely to meet people.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to piggyback off what Henry was talking about is that, you know, I've gone to several panels where like college admissions officers come and talk about what they want from our high school students and like how they think our high school students should differentiate themselves in their college application process. And the theme I hear is that they don't care as much what your activities are as they want you to go in depth in them, like Connor was talking about, and that they appreciate if you're a leader in that activity. You know, like, so if you're a captain of the team, you know, or if you're leading practices, you know, as opposed to just somebody who's following somebody else's lead, like that helps you stand out. And then, also to piggyback off that, Sneezy asked about, are there certain activities that colleges are impressed by? I think it's important to recognize that different colleges are looking for different types of students. So like if you're a college that has like a top winning soccer program, if you did really well in soccer and you indicate that you want to continue playing soccer, that says something to that school in a way that it doesn't say to another school that doesn't have a soccer program. Does that make sense? Like, or if you're applying to St. Olaf and you are a really accomplished singer, that says something to St. Olaf in a different way than it does to Carleton, who is not famous for having a choral program in the same way. Like, so, you know, so some of it has to do with your different activities are going to be more attractive for specific colleges because that's something they've put a lot of resources in. So yeah. Both Abby and Sana have questions about college credits that I think would be good to group together. What kind of college credit did you leave high school with and how did it transfer? And Sana asked, how transferable are credits from the U of M? Was it difficult to transfer credits to places such as Stanford and Berkeley? Were you able to transfer everything? When you're in a PSEO class at the U of M, are you with other high school students or are you with other college-age students? So is there anybody who'd be willing to take Abby and Sana's questions? Okay, go for it, Alexa.
Yeah, I can say a little bit more. So I left with some AP credit from my freshman and sophomore year, and then as well as the U of M credits that I had from my junior and senior year. At UC Berkeley, they had just like a standard number of credits and like what it could get you out of depending on your AP test score. So that transferred really easily. It was just automatic. You just sent them your scores. The U of M credits, again, were a little bit more challenging. So UC Berkeley has a really great credit transfer program if you're coming from one of their community colleges or state schools. But unfortunately, because, you know, they don't get that many people transferring from the U of M, it's harder to get it to transfer. So some of them, where they're less picky, like I said, the kind of general education credits, I just talked to my like advisor and she was like, yep, that was a college class. I'll give you 4 units. And then the other ones, if I wanted it to count to something specific, it was harder. I had to be like, did I save that syllabus somewhere? And I had to gather documentation and like a reviewer had to look at it and go through all of the specifics. So it was harder if I wanted it to count for like a specific requirement for my major.
Okay, we have an unusual question here. So we've got Lily. Would any of you recommend not completely focusing on academics and getting into college and instead taking the time to explore different paths and classes that you're interested in? Or would it be better focusing on getting into a good college and then exploring different paths later on in either college or graduate school? Who wants to
That's the $1 million question right there.
You wanted to say more than that, Henry, or are you just going to declare Lily deep?
I don't know. I don't know if they're. I would say like follow your. I don't know. It sounds corny, but like follow your heart. I guess I'm not far enough along to speak to it, but that is definitely something I had to think about too.
Lily, I think one of the problems is that many of you guys are multi-potential. Like you're really good at math and science and history and English. And according to social science research, the best thing for you to do is to continue to take classes in a variety of different areas at a high level so that you can figure out not only what you're good at, but what you enjoy. Because frequently with students that are high potential, the issue is that you're good at lots of things. Does that make sense? But that doesn't mean you enjoy them. But it's not until you sort of get into those more challenging classes that you start to figure out, yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to. And like, so trying to get to that point is hard. And I don't think that that's really possible for most people to get to that point in high school. If you're a certain type of kid, like most people are getting to that level where they're like, yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to. Most people who are gifted sort of hit that level in college. And I'll be honest, it was, some areas for me, it was really obvious. It's like no one was staying up at night wondering if Meredith was going to major in math or science. But there were lots of things that I was good at. And it's like, so you need to sort of get into those opportunities of where things are more challenging so you can figure out, yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to, or that really incites me. Or as Harry was talking about, I'll be honest, like I went to Mac thinking I wanted to major in art history. Yep, I did. I thought I wanted to be a museum director. But I fell in love with the McAllister History Department. They were the most interesting professors I had, and that changed my life. And so some of it also has to do with like who sparks your fire, and some of that has to do with the discipline, but some of that has to do with the human beings that are at your school. And so, that could go a variety of ways. Is there anybody else who wants to tackle that one?
I have an opinion. I feel like while I was in high school classes, like AP or not, honestly, I pretty much knew how I would feel about the class at the beginning. I was never really surprised. But when I got into college, I would take a class in something random just because I couldn't get into another class, but I would have an amazing experience in that class, and that would happen much more often. So I would say for that reason, I think it's more worthwhile to explore in college. But at the same time, I sort of pushed myself to like take high-level classes and things that I knew I wasn't good at. Like Miss Abby said, I was never a math or science person, but I pushed myself to take AP classes in there. And honestly, looking back, I didn't enjoy those classes, and I think I would have rather spent time focusing on something like going deep into learning Spanish or something like that. So while I think you can, there's a trade-off, You don't have to push yourself to be super great in every single respect and like go as hard as you can in every single area in high school.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
I would just say, generally, I think that's kind of one of the things that the liberal arts kind of do very well is kind of giving you those opportunities to kind of explore more into college rather than maybe declaring a major early and then maybe deciding you're not into it.
I want to recognize that we're at 2:06. Okay. Audrey has a question here. Does either PSU or AP look more attractive to colleges? I think that they say that similar things to colleges. They say that you are doing college level work in high school. I think it is particularly, I think the difference between the two of them is that they don't necessarily know what an A from Normandale means. They have a better idea what an A from the University of Minnesota means, but they definitely know what a 5 means or a 4 means. Like, and so some of it has to do with if you're applying to out of state. Does that make sense? Like, Normandale credits mean something in Minnesota, but they don't necessarily mean things in California, you know, so part of that has to do with sort of looking at your vision for where you're going. We're going to end with Sadia's question here, because I think that it's a valuable question and sort of a good way to end it. She says, when doing PSEO, but I would also say taking a full load of AP classes would provide you with the same issue. Is there a way you can balance a job with that, since you have more of a different schedule? Because I also feel like just this issue of balance is something that repeatedly comes up when I have conversations with high achieving juniors and seniors, that like you've got extracurriculars, you might have a job, you might have family responsibilities. This issue of balance is important. And so is there anybody who would want to address this issue of balance, particularly the schedule piece, but just balance in general as we close out for today?
I would say really quickly, like, you don't need to kill yourself to get into like most schools. Like, don't get too stressed out. And with a job, I worked like 7 hours a week at a job, and that was while doing AP classes and like doing after school activities, and that was really hard. I think that in order to just have good mental health, it would be hard to do, you know, a job, extracurricular activities, and AP or PSEO. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I did have a couple of friends doing PSEO who were able to do on-campus jobs at the U, work in like the tech bar or whatever it's called, or like different things around campus. And I would also say, because doing PSEO, I can't remember exactly, but you're generally taking maybe like 3 to 4 classes a semester rather than 6. And so there is opportunities, like, although you might have the same amount of time during a week spent in class, maybe it's all on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and your Tuesdays and Thursdays are open. And so there are definitely, if your job is more flexible, you can definitely make it work. Although then it becomes a balance problem and a mental health problem maybe. But like, there's definitely ways to fit it in.
Anyone else want to weigh in on the balance question? Okay, I think it would be great if people had the ability to, you know, unmute or show your camera and like give a round of applause for our speakers, all of which who took time out of their busy lives to speak with us, and some of them took time out of their workday, which I totally appreciate. I will coordinate another one of these next year, and hopefully more people have actually been on their college campuses. But I really appreciate our speakers making the time to be able to share these stories with our students, because the fact is that you guys are becoming lifelong learners, and that's one of my visions for this program. Is it's not just about like, oh, I need to learn the stuff for this test. It's like, I need to learn to be a better learner, and part of being a lifelong learner is sort of thinking about, where do I get to go after this? Where do I get to keep learning? What do I want to learn about? And so I'm glad that we had the opportunity to connect with some of our BPS graduates, and thank you, students, for being able to come as well. I look forward to seeing you guys later, and I really appreciate our speakers for coming. So thank you.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thank you.